Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy,
where we're expanding the conversation around Catholic sexuality.
We're your hosts, Ellen and Kathleen. All right, we are back with another Charting Toward Intimacy episode. I'm Ellen.
I'm Kathleen, and we are here.
Today, the topic or the title of this episode is called "A Watched Pot Never Boils." So we're talking about those times when you are like trying to get turned on, and it's just like it's not happening, and how to kind of work through that. Some tips. Some ideas. And this is something that this is real for Kathleen and I. We regularly struggle with this, and we do a lot of research on this.
Yeah, and I would say I want to point out that whatever we're talking about today, whatever tips and advice, I mean, specifically that I might mention, are not things that I have come to on my own, but are things that I have learned in doing my own research that I'm doing right now, in reading books, listening to other podcasts, other professionals. So yeah, and maybe we can have a whole other resource at some point where I mention those things, but we don't necessarily want to mention them if we don't know
right
exactly.
So here's the thing when it comes to resources on sex.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
There are very few Catholic resources on sex that uphold the dignity of the person and uphold the dignity of the act. Exactly. And so that's Kathleen and I do a ton of research. We read a lot of heretical books in order to bring that information to you in an accessible way that you also can trust. So yeah. We do a ton of research. This isn't stuff from personal experience. This is stuff that we're learning from books, other resources, classes that I'm taking, all that kind of stuff. That's what we're compiling here for you.
Exactly.
Before we jump into this week's episode, I want to tell you about one of our partners, Tighten Your Tinkler. This is an at-home pelvic floor therapy program that really actually works. One of the things I was most drawn to about this program was the promise of no need for Kegel exercises and no penetrative work. The only Kegels I had to do were at the beginning to get a baseline so I could compare after a month. And my goodness, did I see a difference. I also love the fact that I did not need to go to a doctor's office. I have 2 kids. You listening probably have that or more. Getting childcare for doctor's appointments makes it prohibitively expensive for most women to get the pelvic floor therapy they need. The average woman spends $900 per year dealing with the issues related to pelvic floor dysfunction, from doctor's appointments to therapies to products that treat the symptoms only. And for less than $600, you can heal the root cause and get lifetime access to the Tighten Your Tinkler program to revisit anytime you need. The code CHARTING50 gets you $50 off the program. Go check out the link in the show notes. Okay, so a watched pot never boils. All right, you're making pasta for dinner. You put the water in the pot. You turn it on.
I literally did this the other night. Literally exactly this. Go ahead.
And you stand there and it's not boiling. And it's not boiling. And it's still not boiling. And it's not until you walk away and go do something else. And then all of a sudden you have a rolling boil.
Yep.
That's what we're talking about. When it comes to your desire. What happens to particularly women is that we've got this hall monitor in our head monitoring everything we're thinking about. I've in my conversations with my husband, I was flabbergasted to learn that he doesn't think about what he thinks about.
Yes.
I think about what I'm thinking about all the time. We're a step away from what we're doing and what we're thinking about all the time. We're observing what our brain is doing. Now, I'm not saying this is always happening. And what we're going to really try to encourage you to do is get away from doing that, especially when it comes to desire and, being turned on and whatever you want to call that term.
Yeah.
It's defined in a lot of different ways. And so, but yeah, like I was shocked that men don't think about what they're thinking about on a regular basis.
Yeah, and that they can think about nothing. Do you know that?
Okay, yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me.
It's like, I'm sure other people have heard this. This like, maybe it was like a TED talk or something. I don't know.
I think it was like a pastor, like a Christian pastor's homily. You're talking about the boxes.
Yeah, maybe that was it. Where they talk about like how women, like, it's like a board that's like connected, like everything on the board is just connected. And so when you think of one thing, like it connects to another thing, and it just keeps going. It's never ending. Whereas men, when they think about things, they're like little boxes that they pull out and they think about the things just in that box. And then when they're done, they put it away.
Yeah.
It's like very organized.
And there is a box.
They have a box
for nothing. They have a nothing box
that they can just pull out and think of nothing. And I was like, does not compute. I do not understand how that's possible.
Guess what? Men and women are different.
No joke.
This is not a podcast about gender identity. Okay. All right. So we want to give you some resource, some meat to work with here. Your desire, your level of desire for your spouse, your ability to get turned on has a lot to do with everything else in your life. It actually has very little to do with your sex life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has more to do with your stress. It has more to do with, the kinds of things that you have on your plate mental load wise, right? So what's going on with your kids, house, car payments, finances, what you're making for dinner, like those, it has so much more to do with everything else that's going on in your head.
And honestly, the majority of that is stress, right? Like it's all right. It's big life stressors, it's little daily stressors. And I think that, when we talk about like higher desire and lower desire, we tend to talk in terms of men being higher desire and women being lower desire. And that's not a rule, right? Like that can definitely be reversed and often is reversed in many relationships. But I think because women are the quintessential multitaskers, right? The ones who are maybe working, but also, handling the meals at home and handling the laundry and handling women tend to take on the majority of daily stressors, that it's a lot easier for women to become the lower desire because of all of these things that are constantly weighing us down. And I say weighing us down, but it's that way of thinking that we were just talking about, that interconnectedness, right? Like when I put my kids to bed at night, right? It's like, okay, I've got to get them down. I've got to read them a story, and then I can't just go to bed. I've got to maybe go pack their lunches, or I've got to prep breakfast for the morning, or I've got to put in laundry to make sure they have clean uniforms tomorrow. It's all of those things. Like stuff never stops, or stops very rarely. So, we have to be more intentional about it. And I think that's why we end up being kind of, tend to be more lower desire.
Right. And it's because things are crowding out that capacity for desiring sex. It's not that you have a lower desire for it.
Right.
It's that everything else is getting in the way. And so it's your job, you listening right now. This is a personal work thing.
Yeah. And that's, I think, a big point we need to make is that while there's always going to be a level of couple work, right, that needs to be done in regards to intimacy and desire, for the most part, it's individual work that needs to be done.
Right. This, like, you need to take an assessment, right, of what's going on in your head, and then push those things out of the way, right? You're not going to be able to eliminate all of them, but you can ask them to take a back seat, right? Ask that thought about, making sure that you leave the house 15 minutes early so you can put gas in the car before you take the kids to school. Like, ask that thought to take a step back because you need some space.
Exactly right. Yeah, no, I think, I know when before I even really started exploring desire, right? And how to increase desire and all of that, I didn't even know, and I'm still figuring it out, right? Like what the source of this low desire was. I didn't even really recognize that I had low desire, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, well, what do you expect of me, right? Like, I've got all this stuff on my plate. Like, maybe you should take some of it away, and maybe that would help me, right? And that's not it.
That's not all of it, right? Like,
it's not all of it. It can be a small piece, but it's not. But even then, right? I'm going to put this out there. Even then, when my husband starts doing the dishes at night because he wants to help me so that my desire increases, right?
Your capacity.
Like,
let's say like your capacity for desire, right? Because like those, the dishes and the thought about needing to do the dishes is like in the way. Think of it as like a physical space in your brain. And that like all of these thoughts are taking up space. And so we need to give your desire space to take up more space, to increase in that. Like I'm imagining this like circle with all these different little like bubbles in it, that like if you can like move the bubbles out of, this like front part of your brain, what's on your mind immediately. If you can move those bubbles out, then the desire bubble can start taking up more space.
Yes. Now I will say though, there's a the word is like totally leaving my brain right now, but there's a challenge in this as well, because if I start noticing, wow, he's been doing the dishes a lot more, so that my desire comes back because he wants to have more sex, right? Then there's a counterintuitive pressure put on me. He's doing the dishes, that where I'm relating, he's doing the dishes because he wants more sex, right? And now it's like, now there's this pressure, like, you need to have more sex. He's doing the dishes. Now you need to give him sex. It becomes sort of transactional,
right?
Which does not help desire.
Not at all. Right? Well, it becomes another bubble in that circle. Like, right? Pressure to have sex is now taking up more space than desire to have sex.
And your husband hasn't said a single word.
No.
And all he's done is try to help. Right. So it's like, how am I supposed to fix this when like I think he's doing the right things, right? But it's not helping me at the same time. Like, why is that the case? Why is that happening? And I think that what it comes down to is what I'm starting to figure out is that in order to increase desire, you need to do all the things opposite of what you think you should do.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
It's like, it's so crazy. Like, it's almost like you need to take sex out of the equation and just do the things that make you a good wife or make you a good husband without sex even like being a factor in it all, and it's when you take it out. And I think that's getting kind of to a point that we want to talk about.
Yeah. One of the bullets on our outline.
One of our bullets, is like taking sex sort of off the table.
Right. Or if you don't want to take sex off the table, which can be sensitive for certain dynamics, right? But the best advice I ever got about trying to achieve orgasm, try not to orgasm. Actively try to not orgasm, like while you're having intercourse.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Like, it's the opposite of what you think you should be doing.
Right. Because here's the thing.
Most effective thing.
Here's the thing that happens when you actively try not, is that you end up focusing more on, okay, how can I be a gift? How can I like open myself to my spouse? How can I give him something in this moment that he'll desire, maybe rubbing his back or tossing his hair or, whatever's happening in the moment. And it steps that monitoring of what's going on in your brain. It puts that monitor thinking about other things. And so now suddenly that libido, that desire, that amount of turned onness, kind of whatever phrasing works for you, whatever vocab word, that now is given space to grow because nobody's watching it, right? We walked away from the pot of water, and it's now going to come surprisingly and sometimes very quickly going to come to a rising or rolling boil. That might feel very unexpected, but it's like, it sounds so counterintuitive, but I just urge you to try this. Try not to get there.
So, but we were talking about the individual work,
right,
of desire, and I think we have a few little pieces of advice that we have learned and are learning currently and
are working on
that have been really, really good in terms of like, how can I personally by myself without my husband, right, or wife or whatever, try to increase my desire.
Right.
And the biggest thing we talked about is stress being probably the biggest inhibitor to desire, right? It's life stress, it's daily stress, it's all the stressors. And one thing you can, that is really sort of focused on in this work is closing your stress response. And I am trying so hard to figure out how to do this personally. And the reason I'm trying to figure it out is because I don't know how to close a stress response when the stressor is ongoing.
Right. So it's the constant stress of, okay, our finances are low right now. And somehow we have to feed, I have to go to the grocery store and feed the whole family. And we also have this car payment and,
exactly. Or like I have this project that I'm working on and it's not going to be done for another month and a half, right? Like I have a month and a half of worrying about this project, right? Whatever it is, stress is not always easy to just turn off when it's still always there. So there are things that you can Google though. If you do a Google search for closing stress response, you can find a ton of different suggestions. And a lot of it is physical, right? Like having a dance party.
Yes.
Obviously like meditation, right? Even like different, sort of like mental health, like coping skills, like giving yourself a hug, like squeezing yourself, like
physical. This is where like tapping,
exactly,
those kinds of things, like we are a body soul being.
Yes.
So what's going on in our mind can often be the most easily diffused through our body.
Yes.
And doing something physical to kind of like get us out of that rut that's in our brain. And so, like dancing, and a really great one is like dancing with your spouse too, because now you're getting like a physical touch aspect, but it's like, it's low stress. It's not like, oh, this has to lead to sex. It's like, no, this is just something we're doing to increase intimacy. Like put your wedding song on, or just a song you like if you're like, oh man, I was so young when I picked that song, right?
Mistake.
I don't know if anybody feels that way.
That's really funny.
Oh man, my husband and I are high school sweethearts, so our song is like something we listened to in high school, and I'm just like,
oh my
sometimes.
Other tips though, Ellen. What else do you have?
Yeah, so physical is huge for mental load, but another aspect of like this stress response and like mental load, these are very connected, and this is particularly helpful in the moment, is, but practice it out of the moment. But is like when a thought comes to your mind, about one of those stressful things, like when a stress thought, or even just like some other thought of like, oh shoot, I forgot to switch the laundry over, right? That's not like a super stressful thing, but, but it's part of this mental load. It can aggravate that stress as well. Is practicing like recognizing when a thought comes into your mind and then saying, okay, thanks, and pushing it to the side. And because again, like if you think about this image of, you've got this circle, you've only got so much space in the forefront of your mind. And when that thought pops in, it's taking up space that your desire needs to take up space, that you want your desire to take up space. And so you need to say, you just need to acknowledge that it happened. Don't get mad at yourself that, oh my gosh, I got off track again. That's what happens. Like things pop into our brains. And so just acknowledge it and push it to the side. If you need to, like do something active in the moment. Like tell your husband, like, oh, my brain just got off track again. Like, can you do something to help me get back on track? Right. That might be, asking him to talk to you in some way, or, paint a picture for you of where you're at, imaginarily. Right. Or talking sweetly to you or whatever. Like that might help. Is something audible from your spouse. Or maybe even like something audible from yourself. Maybe that thought comes into your head. And so, to help kind of get your brain back on track is you start talking and you start saying things. Again, like whatever works for you, there's so many different options when it comes to talking during intercourse. That's a whole nother episode in itself.
That's true. That is very true.
But that might be a good way, but just practicing like not getting angry at yourself for getting off track, because that's going to happen. You need to know that it's going to happen, and it's okay. It's completely normal that happened. And so just say, okay, great. And move it to the side.
It's like listening to the thought and then letting it go.
Let it go. Let it go. Yeah. And that's not an easy thing. Like, I'm saying it in so many words, and it's like in the moment you're like, I can't let go of this thought. And then you start thinking about how you can't let go of the thought. And then you've got this spiral going on, right? And it's like, take a deep breath. It's okay.
Yeah.
Let go.
I can get back to this after this is done.
Right.
Right. Like I can let it go for now. It's not going to.
Another good one. You can always ask your guardian angel, hey, could you remind me of that in a little while? Right. Could you pop that thought back into my head later? Because I don't need it right now. Right?
Yes, that's so true.
And that might seem a little bit like weird for you to ask your guardian angel to help you in some way during sex. I recognize that might feel uncomfortable, but your guardian angel is there from God to support, protect, and guide you toward God. When you're having sex with your husband, you're getting holier. Like, sex is a very holy thing. So of course, your guardian angel would be right there to help you. Yes. And want to. Okay, let's talk about self-care before we close out. Yeah. This is a big one too.
It is a big one. And honestly, for me to talk about self-care is the pot calling the kettle black, because like how many times, my husband has been a saint in regards to like encouraging my self-care. And I'm always like the one who's like, no, I don't have the time. I don't like I'm not in a stage of life. Like I'm not in a season of life where I can afford self-care. I've got too many young kids. There's too many to-dos. Like I can't afford to give myself self-care right now. Right. Like there's too many kids to care about. Yeah. And I'm starting to realize now at almost 35 years old that there is no excuse to not take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Like, and there are inexpensive ways of self-care. Our culture is like, oh, self-care is a day at the spa
Right, or like
or
manicures, every couple weeks or,
Mhm.
like, and no, it could literally just be driving to the bookstore and just with your own book in hand and sitting down and reading for an hour,
right.
right? Like it
Or
could just be getting out anywhere that you want to go, grabbing a coffee and just enjoying whatever personal time for yourself. Go to adoration.
that'd be
Have
a
some,
great choice.
allow yourself just like some quiet time to think your thoughts in the presence of God, right? Like we
Yeah.
we don't, as mothers, just constantly giving of ourselves all day long. We have so little time to be with our own thoughts.
Mhm. Mhm.
And especially to be with God in prayer. I feel
Right.
like that is even, we're struggling to even get that, right? Give that to yourself for an hour, 2 hours a week, whatever, you can afford, with you agree to with your spouse, like take that time. Or go out and do some shopping. If there's something you need a new pair of jeans, go find a new pair of jeans
Right.
by yourself where you don't have to get kids in and out of the car with you all the time and to have them screaming while you try things on in the dressing room. Ask me how I know, right? Like it's like anything. It could be anything.
Yeah. Even sometimes like just grocery shopping by myself. Like I know I feel like I hear this a lot of like grocery shopping for moms is not self-care. And it's like actually for me, I do kind of like grocery shopping by myself. I enjoy that. I really like shopping and we don't
Mhm.
have budget right now for me to go shopping. And
Yeah.
so if I can go grocery shopping by myself, I get that like same enticement of like looking for things and comparing items, deciding which ones to buy and like buying them, right? But I'm not like blowing our budget on
Yes.
shopping for other
Yes.
things, right?
Yes.
So like find what works for you, right? You may feel like you're in a season and I would hesitate to say that anybody really would be in this situation, but you might feel like you're in a situation where it's like it's not even possible for you to get out of the house an hour a week. And so in that case, okay, wake up 5 minutes earlier or stay awake 5 minutes later at night.
Mhm.
By
Yeah.
yourself, light a candle or grab a journal or grab the Bible or just sit there and leave your phone upstairs like and just don't even do anything.
Yeah.
Like I know you can find time in your day to give yourself just you time
Yeah.
/ you and God time. Like, this self-care could absolutely be prayer time and is in many ways is a
Yeah.
prayer.
So true.
And like I think a really important word here is leisure. And a lot of times, especially if you are a mom, leisure doesn't really exist in our day.
No.
Whether you're a working mom or a stay-at-home mom, which both moms are totally working moms, um,
Yeah.
or maybe you're a combo of both, right? Leisure, spending time with our kids and playing with them is super, super fun. It's never leisure. It's never leisure. Like,
Mm-mm.
find time for leisure, for letting the stress that's sitting on your shoulders relax a little bit.
Yeah.
Be able to sit down and somebody else is taking care of the kids and you're able to just take a deep breath. Or allow yourself that space to say, okay, I've got all these projects that I'm working on, but for the next 5 minutes, they don't matter at all. And you know what can really help? When you give yourself 20 minutes and you're like, I'm just going to relax. Bring a notebook with you to write down the like things you think of that you need to do, right? Oh, shoot, I need to go pick up a green t-shirt for Johnny because they have, Green Day at school on Thursday. And
Yeah.
I don't know. That was the first thought that popped in my head. I don't have a kid named Johnny, nor do they go to school. But having something like physical to be able to like write down those thoughts is a really great way. If we're kind of circling back to one of the first pieces of advice we gave you, was like learning how to, just acknowledge the thought and then move it to the side, is physically doing that. can really help with that practice. When you physically write something down, that way you know it's not going to be forgotten because you wrote it down on this piece of paper. And once you're done with your 20 minutes or your hour or maybe a couple hours or whatever, like you can go back to that and say, oh, yes, okay, here's my to-do list for the day, right? Great.
Yeah.
And that can just, that I think can be a good first step in that practice of acknowledging thoughts and then moving them to the side.
I agree. And, I think about it. There was a few weeks ago where I don't remember where I went or what I was doing. I don't remember if I was with my husband or by myself. I have no idea. Can't remember any of the details of this situation. But I was without the kids for like a significant amount of time, right? Like maybe like a quarter of the day or like half the day or something. And I was amazed. Maybe my kids were off at my in-laws or something. I forget, but whatever it was, I was not with them for a significant portion of the day. And I remember coming back to them and just being like, you know what? Like, I feel refreshed and renewed. I feel like I can handle you guys right now. And I want to be with you guys. And I want to sit and talk with you. And I want, in a way that on the everyday, when everything's like you're just like taking care of everything 24/7, you don't feel the joy of like being with your kids sometimes,
or being with your spouse, right?
And that's it. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say is like, there's a very not similar, it's exactly the same. Sometimes it's like absence makes the heart grow fonder. When you can step aside and focus just on yourself and relax and experience that leisure in whatever way is meaningful and fulfilling to you, when you come back, your desire is greater, right? Like you need to let all of that stuff off to come back to your spouse and be like, hey, I missed you, right? Like, and now I want to be with you.
Yeah.
It's that, and finding ways to experience that absence when you live with somebody, right? It's like it's important. I've always found that saying to be so insanely true. Absence makes the heart grow fonder in every situation.
Yeah.
So find yourself that time, give yourself that absence, so that you can come back, you can be refreshed, renewed, and really just and that desire can build. I think it's like such a powerful thing to do for ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's your marching orders is let go of watching the pot. Walk away from it. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, right?
Absence makes the heart grow fonder, or it makes the water boil faster.
It does, right? So just let it go. Just let it go. Thanks so much for listening. If you are not already following us on Instagram, be sure to check us out at Charting Toward Intimacy. And if you listen to podcasts on a platform that gives you the option to rate or review, we'd love for you to do that because it helps us spread the word about the podcast. If you ever have questions, comments, or episode topic ideas, please reach out to us. We love to hear from you. You can reach out on Instagram or send us an email. Our email is in the show notes. Until next time.